They bulldozed my dream home while I was burying my father. 6 months later, I wiped their entire HOA district off the state map. Legally. Get this. I'm standing graveside saying goodbye to Dad. 40 miles away, HOA President Cordelia Blackthorne is filming my custom stone fireplace getting crushed by a bulldozer. The same fireplace Dad and I built together, stone by stone. Diesel exhaust mixed with mountain pine as steel treads crunched ceramic tiles. That metallic screech against granite countertops, my grief turning into calculated rage. My vintage wine collection, Dad's retirement gift, dumped like garbage. Handcrafted oak cabinets splintering under machinery. But Cordelia made one fatal mistake while smirking at the destruction. She didn't know I'm a structural engineer who reads legal documents for fun. Ever dealt with power-drunk HOAs? Drop your horror story below. Tell me your location. I want to see how far this revenge travels. My name's Ezra Thornfield, 52 years old. Semi-retired structural engineer who thought he'd found paradise in Pine Ridge Estates, Colorado. 3.2 acres of mountain heaven. I built my dream home with my own hands after my wife Sarah lost her cancer battle. Timber frame construction. Floor-to-ceiling windows capturing every sunrise. A wraparound deck where eagles soared over the valley. 18 months of therapeutic building. The workshop became my sanctuary. Smell of sawdust mixed with pine needle scent. Every morning I'd sip coffee from my handmade ceramic mug. Rough-hewn timber beams under calloused hands. Mountain wind whispering through tall ponderosa pines. Solar panels. Rainwater collection. Organic vegetable garden. Native Colorado wildflowers everywhere. Unlike most suburbanites, I actually researched what belonged in this ecosystem. Then Cordelia Blackthorne entered my life like a perfectly coiffed tornado. 47 years old, real estate developer turned HOA president. White Tesla Model S, iPad permanently attached to her manicured hands, constantly taking violation photos of residents' homes, blonde hair that defied mountain wind physics, failed city council candidate. Now she micromanaged our HOA like her personal fiefdom. Her cousin Rex Grundy served as enforcement officer. Ex-mall security guard with authority delusions. Golf cart equipped with fake police light bar. Took violation photos at dawn like some suburban paparazzi. Honestly, watching Rex cruise around in that golf cart was like witnessing a midlife crisis with wheels. The attack came on Tuesday morning. Certified letter demanding $500 for unauthorized landscaping modifications. My crime? Planting native wildflowers instead of water-hungry Kentucky bluegrass. Dear Mr. Thornfield, Cordelia's prissy tone leaked through the paper. Your property displays weeds inconsistent with community standards. Remove unauthorized vegetation. Install approved turf grass within 30 days. I requested a hearing. Showed up with research. Native plants reduce water usage 60%, support local wildlife, actually increase property values 8 to 12%. Cordelia dismissed my appeal without reading it, doubled the fine to $1,000. Rules are rules, she said, not looking up from her iPad. Weeds are weeds. That's when I noticed the pattern. Elderly Jenkins, $800 fine for wrong mailbox color. Young family, foreclosure threats over kids' chalk drawings. Other residents lived in terror. Retired teacher Millicent Hargrove mentioned Rex photographing her garden with a ruler, measuring plant heights like some demented surveyor. Vietnam vet Dalton Rivers shared his harassment story. Fined for parking his truck at a non-compliant angle in his own driveway. Young mother Ivy Riley whispered about Rex following her to grocery stores, taking photos through car windows of her children. The morning coffee steam from my handmade mug started tasting bitter. This wasn't peaceful mountain living. This was suburban fascism run by a wannabe dictator. But Cordelia misunderstood something fundamental about engineers. We solve problems systematically. We research everything. We build solutions that last decades. She wanted to fight over wildflowers? Perfect. But she'd picked the wrong target. I'd buried my wife. Built my dream home with bare hands. Survived 30 years of corporate politics. Some petty HOA queen wasn't breaking me. Knowledge nugget. Original H. OA covenants always supersede later rule interpretations added by boards. Takeaway. Get copies of original documents filed with your county clerk. They're your legal foundation. I spent that evening pulling every document related to Pine Ridge Estates. Time to discover exactly what authority Cordelia actually possessed. Spoiler alert, not nearly as much as she believed. The texture of those original covenant papers felt different under my fingers. Heavier stock, official seals, real legal language instead of Cordelia's made-up nonsense. And buried in Section 12, Subsection 4, I found something interesting. Something about decorative landscaping with seasonal plants. Wildflowers are seasonal plants, aren't they? Game on, Cordelia. Cordelia's next move came faster than mountain weather changes, a cease and desist order for my vegetable garden. Apparently, organic tomatoes created an unsightly agricultural appearance that violated community standards. The letter threatened daily $200 fines until I removed every vegetable plant. Rex had actually photographed my tomatoes with a ruler, a grown man measuring cherry tomato plants like they were nuclear weapons. But two can play the research game. I spent 3 days in the county clerk's office digging through original HOA covenants from 2018. My law school buddy had once told me that original documents always trump later interpretations. Smart advice. Buried in Section 12, I found gold. Homeowners may engage in decorative landscaping with seasonal plants for aesthetic enhancement. Last time I checked, vegetables qualify as seasonal plants. Botanically speaking, tomatoes are fruits. Legally speaking, they're seasonal decorative plants. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was using plant taxonomy to fight suburban tyranny. Board meeting night arrived. Cordelia sat at the head table like she was presiding over the Supreme Court. Her power suit probably cost more than most people's monthly mortgage. Mr. Thornfield's agricultural activities violate aesthetic standards, she announced. Gardens attract vermin and reduce property values. She'd brought a wildlife expert to testify. Turned out to be her hairdresser's boyfriend, Marcus, who once watched a Discovery Channel documentary about raccoons. Vegetable gardens definitely attract, animals and stuff, Marcus mumbled, reading from index cards. My turn. I stood up with my Colorado State University Extension agent, Dr. Patricia Yellowbird, actual wildlife biologist with 2 decades of ecosystem research. Native plant gardens increase property values 8 to 12%, Dr. Yellowbird testified. They support beneficial insects, reduce water consumption, and create sustainable landscaping that buyers actively seek. Cordelia's face turned the color of my ripe tomatoes. The original covenants clearly allow seasonal plants for aesthetic purposes, I continued. Unless Ms. Blackthorne is arguing that vegetables aren't plants? The room fell silent. Even Marcus stopped shuffling his index cards. 3 neighbors quietly nodded approval. Retired teacher Millicent Hargrove took notes. Vietnam vet Dalton Rivers gave me a subtle thumbs up. Young mother Ivy Riley smiled for the first time in months. But Cordelia wasn't finished. We'll be increasing inspection frequency for Mr. Thornfield's property, she announced. Twice weekly compliance checks to ensure no further violations occur. Rex beamed like he'd just been promoted to general. The harassment escalated immediately. Violation notices for doormat placement. Apparently mine was 3 inches too far left. Christmas lights duration exceeded the 45-day limit by 2 days. My truck was parked at a 17-degree angle instead of the required 20 degrees. Rex started arriving at 6 a.m. for compliance checks. The beeping from his golf cart became my new alarm clock. He took violation photos from multiple angles with a timestamp camera. One morning I watched him measure the distance between my mailbox and driveway edge. Twice, with 2 different measuring tapes. "Morning, Rex," I called out. "Find any criminal mailbox violations today?" He scurried away like I'd caught him stealing cookies. I remembered my corporate lawyer days when selective enforcement could invalidate entire contract structures. Same principle applied to HOA covenants under Colorado law. Time to document everything. The community started noticing Cordelia's vendetta. Millicent mentioned that Rex never measured anyone else's mailbox placement. Dalton pointed out that 3 other homes had identical Christmas light displays for the same duration. I began photographing every property in Pine Ridge Estates. Mailbox angles, doormat positions, decorative plant varieties, building a database of selective enforcement patterns. Meanwhile, my tomatoes grew bigger and more delicious. The sweet fragrance of heirloom varieties filled morning air. Fresh snow peas crunched perfectly between my teeth during garden walks. Morning dew beaded on lettuce leaves while Rex photographed from the property line. Neighbors started asking about my plants, quietly, carefully, when Rex wasn't patrolling. "Those tomatoes look amazing," Ivy whispered during a grocery store encounter. "Happy to share some," I replied, along with planting tips. Cordelia's power depended on isolated, fearful residents. But vegetables have a way of bringing people together. Ancient human instinct kicks in when you see food growing successfully. 3 more families expressed interest in starting gardens. Millicent offered historical research assistance about original covenant language. Dalton shared his own harassment documentation. A secret group chat formed. Pine Ridge Truth, 19 members and growing. Rex increased his surveillance. The crack of fresh snow peas being harvested echoed through dawn air while he documented my violations. But something was shifting in Pine Ridge Estates. Neighbors made eye contact again. Conversations lasted longer than fearful whispers. Cordelia had made a strategic error. Instead of breaking my spirit, she'd given me a cause worth fighting for. And in trying to isolate me, she'd accidentally created a community. My father always said the strongest structures are built on solid foundations. Time to see exactly what foundation Pine Ridge Estates was built on. Cordelia's next target hit closer to home. Literally. She claimed my solar panels created an industrial appearance that violated aesthetic guidelines. The violation notice cited obscure amendments added in 2022, demanded $15,000 in solar array removal within 30 days, threatened foreclosure proceedings for non-compliance, $15,000 to remove panels that saved me $200 monthly on electricity, the same panels that had powered my workshop through Colorado's brutal winter storms. But something smelled fishier than Rex's lunch breaks. I dove into those 2022 amendments like an engineer troubleshooting a structural failure. What I found would make any lawyer's jaw drop. The amendments passed with only 3 of 47 residents voting. Meeting held at 6 a.m. on Christmas Eve morning. Christmas Eve. At 6 in the morning. Who schedules democracy during holiday breakfast? No proper notice given to homeowners. Colorado law requires 30 days written notice for covenant changes. These amendments needed 25% participation minimum. They got 6%. I'd learned about quorum requirements during my corporate days. Invalid meetings create invalid rules. Simple as that. Time for some strategic documentation. I filed a formal complaint with the Colorado Common Interest Community Board, gathered 23 neighbor signatures invalidating the 2022 rules, presented evidence that amendments were illegally adopted without proper procedures. The smell of fresh coffee mixed with mounting legal paperwork spread across my kitchen table during those late research nights. But Millicent's historical digging uncovered the real gold mine. Cordelia owned shares in Pinnacle Roofing Company. Solar panels threatened her business relationships with traditional roofing contractors. Rex's brother-in-law owned Mountain Turf Landscaping, specialized in grass installation and water-intensive maintenance contracts. My native plants cut into his potential customer base. Financial conflicts of interest never disclosed to homeowners. Classic corruption hiding behind suburban respectability. The mini twist came during Tuesday morning coffee. Anonymous complaint filed against me with county building inspector. Claims my solar installation violated electrical codes. Inspector arrived for surprise safety inspection. Middle-aged guy named Frank with calloused hands and no-nonsense attitude. "Let me guess," Frank said, examining my electrical panels. "HOA complaint? How'd you know?" "Third one this month. Usually means someone's got personal beef instead of safety concerns." Frank spent 2 hours examining every connection, inverter, and safety shutoff. Professional installation by certified electricians. Code compliance exceeding state requirements. "This is textbook work," Frank announced. "Better than most commercial installations I inspect." He signed off with a commendation letter for professional installation quality. Cordelia's desperation showed during the next emergency HOA meeting, scheduled for supporters only, claiming others were unavailable for scheduling conflicts. But I'd learned about guerrilla tactics from Dalton Rivers. Sometimes you crash parties uninvited. I showed up with 12 concerned neighbors just as Cordelia attempted passing an emergency solar removal order. Her face went white when we walked in. "This meeting is for board members only," she stammered. "Funny," I replied, pulling out my phone. Colorado revised statutes require public notice for all HOA meetings affecting homeowner assessments. The community center fell silent except for mountain wind rattling windows. Ivy Riley stood up first. He stood. "I'd like to hear about these solar panel safety concerns." Then Dalton. "My panel's been running fine for 3 years." One by one, neighbors voiced support, not just for solar panels, but for transparent governance and honest communication. Our secret Pine Ridge Truth group chat had grown to 28 households. People were tired of living in fear. Cordelia tried steamrolling through the emergency vote anyway, but parliamentary procedure requires quorum, and we now understood exactly what constituted legal quorum. The electrical hum from solar inverters on sunny afternoons had become the soundtrack to my rebellion. After the meeting, Frank the inspector approached me privately. "You seem like a straight shooter," he said. "That complaint was filed the same day your HOA president visited my office asking about problematic installations in your neighborhood." Coordination between Cordelia and false complaints. The pattern was becoming clear. That evening, neighbor conversations lasted past sunset for the first time in months. Reflection of mountain peaks and solar panel surfaces caught golden hour light. Crisp sound of papers rustling as residents shared their own violation stories. 3 more families mentioned mysterious inspector visits. 2 received threatening letters about code violations that inspectors couldn't actually find. I remembered my engineering professor's advice about systematic failures. When you find one structural problem, always check for others. Corruption rarely exists in isolation. Cordelia had escalated from petty harassment to coordinated intimidation, but she'd also revealed her methods and motivations. Time to see what other financial entanglements she was hiding behind that perfectly maintained facade. Because if there's one thing structural engineers understand, it's finding the weak points that bring down entire systems. Cordelia's next attack targeted my rainwater collection system, claimed it created a public health hazard, and threatened mosquito breeding in stagnant water, $500 daily fines during remediation period. Demanded immediate disconnection of gutters and cistern system. Filed complaint with county health department about environmental contamination. I stood in my workshop, watching Rex photograph my professionally installed cistern through binoculars from his golf cart. The man was documenting water storage like it was a meth lab. But here's the thing about rainwater collection in Colorado. It's explicitly legal under state law. Has been since 2016. Any HOA trying to prohibit water conservation systems is violating state statutes. The health department inspector arrived expecting algae-covered swamps. Instead, he found professionally installed filtration systems with circulation pumps, UV sterilization, and screened collection points. Inspector Martinez spent an hour examining every component, checked water quality, flow rates, and storage protocols. "This is model sustainable water management," he announced. "Better design than most commercial buildings I inspect." The fresh mountain air smell from my properly filtered cistern system reminded me why I'd moved here in the first place. Then came my breakthrough research discovery. While photographing selective enforcement patterns, I noticed something interesting. Cordelia's rental properties used identical rainwater systems. 4 investment properties, each with cisterns, collection gutters, and filtration equipment. Systems installed without HOA approval or architectural review. Clear evidence of selective enforcement and personal targeting. I spent 3 days documenting her properties with time-stamped photographs. Professional-grade cisterns identical to mine. Same manufacturer, same capacity, same installation methods. Property records proved 3 systems installed after mine. So much for her claims about safety concerns. Emergency board meeting time. Cordelia scheduled it for supporters only, claiming scheduling conflicts prevented broader attendance. Wrong move. I crashed that meeting with 12 neighbors and photographic evidence of her hypocrisy. Her face drained color when we walked in carrying poster-sized prints of her rental property cisterns. "This meeting is for board members only," she said, voice shaking. "Funny," I replied, spreading photos across the table. "These rainwater systems look exactly like mine. Same manufacturer, same capacity, same safety features." The room went silent. Board members examined the photographs while Cordelia fumbled for explanations. "My properties predate current regulations," she stammered. I pulled out property records. "These 3 systems were installed last year, after mine, after your new regulations." Dalton Rivers stood up. "Seems like selective enforcement to me." Rex tried intimidating neighbors with increased surveillance, started parking his golf cart in driveways during inspections, took photos through windows of interior home modifications, followed residents to grocery stores and documented their shopping habits. The harassment escalated beyond property violations into stalking behavior. but our community was fighting back. Ivy Riley filed police reports after Rex photographed her children at the school bus stop. Millicent documented his stalking with time-stamped photos from her kitchen window. Pine Ridge Truth group chat expanded to 31 households. People shared Rex surveillance stories, violation patterns, and Cordelia's financial conflicts of interest. The metallic click of Rex's camera shutter from property lines became the annoying soundtrack to our daily lives. During my research into water rights, I discovered something that changed everything. Discrepancy in HOA property boundaries between original 1987 subdivision plat and current district map. Original boundaries didn't match current enforcement areas. Potential surveying error affecting multiple properties, including mine. Millicent suggested examining county assessors' historical records. Retired teachers know where municipal bodies hide their documentation. That evening, we spread county maps across my workshop table. Original 1987 subdivision clearly marked. Current HOA enforcement boundaries extended far beyond original platted area. 24 homes potentially existed outside legal HOA jurisdiction, including mine. The sound of rainwater gurgling through aluminum gutters mixed with our excited conversations. Tension-filled silence as we realized the implications. 4 years of fees, fines, and harassment potentially invalid. Hundreds of thousands in illegal collection if boundaries were wrong. Cordelia's power structure built on fraudulent foundation. Frank, the building inspector, had mentioned something interesting during his visit. HOA boundary changes require filing with Colorado Secretary of State, official documentation, legal procedures, homeowner consent. Time to see if Cordelia's expanded empire had proper legal standing. I remembered my father's engineering wisdom about checking foundations before building structures. Same principle applied to legal authority. If Pine Ridge HOA boundaries were illegally expanded, everything Cordelia had done was void. Every fine, every threat, every harassment campaign. The weak point that would bring down her entire system. My cistern system hummed quietly in the background, circulating fresh mountain water while we planned the investigation that would expose 30 years of potential fraud. Sometimes the best revenge is simply following the paper trail. The county assessor's office smelled like old paper and bureaucratic coffee. Millicent and I spread 1987 records across a scratched metal table while fluorescent lights hummed overhead. What we found changed everything. Original Pine Ridge Estates subdivision included only 23 properties. Current HOA district encompassed 47 homes, including mine. 24 houses technically existed outside legal HOA jurisdiction entirely. The 1987 boundary maps were crystal clear. Hand-drawn property lines, official surveyor stamps, county clerk signatures. Legal HOA district ended 200 feet before my property line. "This can't be right," I muttered, double-checking the measurements. Millicent pulled out her reading glasses. Retired teachers don't make measurement mistakes. "It's right," she said quietly. "Your property was never legally subject to HOA covenants. 4 years of fees, fines, and harassment completely invalid. Other affected homeowners had paid approximately $180,000 in illegal fees. Cordelia's expansion created fraudulent quasi-governmental authority. We requested boundary expansion documentation from 1994. The year HOA district mysteriously doubled in size. What we found was explosive. Meeting minutes showed 12 residents voting in favor, 31 abstaining or completely unaware of the vote. Required supermajority of 75% never achieved for boundary changes. Meeting held in someone's living room. No public notice given. Required homeowner consent signatures forged or missing entirely. The feeling of smooth survey maps under my fingertips revealed 30 years of systematic fraud. Colorado Secretary of State office had no record of 1994 expansion filing. Boundary changes require official state documentation. Legal procedures, notarized signatures, public hearings. None existed. Professional surveyor confirmed our findings. Current legal HOA district covered only original 23 properties. 24 families had been illegally governed for decades. Cordelia's predecessor had orchestrated the expansion, but as current president, she was personally liable for continuing illegal fee collection. Colorado statutes allow treble damages for fraudulent HOA actions, real estate license suspension for boundary fraud participation, potential criminal charges for operating unlawful quasi-governmental entity. But the bigger opportunity was dissolving the entire fraudulent district. 24 illegally governed families deserved freedom and compensation. Cordelia's real estate empire was built on fraudulent HOA control. 6 rental properties within the illegally expanded boundaries. She'd been collecting management fees from properties she had no authority to govern. The smoking gun came from 1994 meeting minutes. Vote count documented in the secretary's handwriting. 12 in favor, 31 abstaining, 4 absent entirely. Required supermajority, 36 votes. Actual votes received, 12. Expansion was legally invalid from day one. Every fee collected from my property was theft. Every violation notice was harassment without legal authority. Every threat of foreclosure was fraud. I sat in my truck outside the county building, mountain peaks reflecting in the windshield. 30 years of HOA tyranny built on a legal foundation. Millicent climbed into the passenger seat with copies of every document. "What are you thinking?" she asked. "I'm thinking Cordelia picked the wrong engineer to mess with." The legal implications were staggering. Not just fee recovery, but complete dissolution of fraudulent authority. Criminal charges for conspiracy and fraud. Civil rights violations under federal law. Cordelia had escalated from petty harassment to operating an illegal quasi-government. Rex had been enforcing non-existent rules with fraudulent authority. My phone buzzed with messages from the Pine Ridge Truth Group chat. 31 households now sharing information, violation stories, and mutual support. Time to contact property rights attorney Helena Blackwood. Contingency fee arrangement for class action lawsuit representing all illegally governed properties. The engineering principle applied perfectly here. When you discover structural failure, you don't patch it. You rebuild on solid foundation. Cordelia's entire power structure was about to come crashing down, and unlike her illegal expansion, our legal demolition would be completely by the book. The warmth of genuine community support during our courthouse victory felt better than any perfectly climate-controlled HOA meeting room. Time to show 24 families what freedom from fraudulent authority actually looked like. Helena Blackwood's law office overlooked downtown Denver's skyline, property rights attorney with 15 years specializing in HOA dissolution and boundary disputes. Sharp suit, sharper mind, and a contingency fee arrangement that meant she only got paid when we won. 30% of recovered damages, she said, reviewing our documentation. But based on these boundary records, we're looking at significant recovery potential. Class action lawsuit representing all 24 illegally governed properties. Strategy, quiet title action to clarify boundaries. Petition, Secretary of State for District Dissolution, demand treble damages under Colorado Consumer Protection Act. The legal framework was solid. Now we needed community organizing. Pine Ridge Truth Group became our formal coalition. Dalton Rivers coordinated veteran neighbors for research support. His military logistics experience proved invaluable for organizing document gathering and evidence compilation. Millicent led historical investigation at County Courthouse. Retired teachers know how to navigate bureaucratic archives. She discovered filing inconsistencies dating back 30 years. Ivy Riley managed communication and neighbor outreach. Her marketing background helped explain complex legal concepts to worried homeowners. The smell of fresh coffee during early morning strategy sessions mixed with determination and growing hope. Evidence gathering phase required systematic documentation. Professional boundary survey of entire Pine Ridge development cost $3,000. Worth every penny for legal certainty. Certified copies of all HOA meeting minutes since 1987. Financial audit of fee collection and expenditure records. Documentation of selective enforcement patterns against specific residents. Financial investigation revealed Cordelia's systematic theft. $340,000 in illegal fees collected over 8 years. Money deposited in HOA accounts she personally controlled. Significant funds transferred to accounts benefiting her rental properties. Rex paid $48,000 annually for enforcement services, with no oversight or documentation. Door-to-door campaign, educating residents about boundary fraud. Information packets with legal documentation and survey maps. Weekly meetings in my workshop to coordinate strategy. 19 of 24 affected families agreed to join class action. 5 holdouts worried about retaliation or legal costs. Understandable after years of intimidation. The warmth from my wood-burning stove during cold mountain evenings created perfect atmosphere for planning sessions. Rex escalated surveillance of coalition members, increased patrols coinciding with neighborhood meetings, golf cart equipped with zoom lens camera for photographing attendees through workshop windows, reports activities to Cordelia for potential retaliation planning. But his obvious surveillance actually helped our case. Harassment documentation for restraining orders. Cordelia's counter-strategy involved emergency board meetings to address resident uprising, attempted passing new rules restricting neighborhood gatherings, threatened additional fines for conspiracy to undermine HOA authority. Her lawyer contacted Helena about potential defamation claims against coalition members. Helena's response was swift and decisive. Bring it on. Truth is absolute defense against defamation. Our documentation was bulletproof. Coalition prepared presentation for next official board meeting. Helena would attend as legal counsel. Local newspaper contacted about potential corruption story. County sheriff notified about potential civil unrest. Better safe than sorry when dissolving fraudulent governments. I remembered my corporate litigation days when we'd faced hostile takeover attempts. Preparation and documentation always trumped intimidation and bluster. Frank, the building inspector, provided written statement about coordinated false complaints. Maintenance workers came forward with evidence of Cordelia instructing utility disconnections. The sound of papers shuffling during evidence organization reminded me of engineering project documentation. Same systematic approach, different stakes. Technical strategy required filing quiet title actions to resolve boundary disputes definitively. Class action lawsuits reduce individual legal costs significantly. Colorado Consumer Protection Act provides treble damages for fraudulent schemes. HOA dissolution requires petition to Secretary of State with resident signatures. 24 families demanding freedom from illegal governance. Helena explained the timeline. 6 months for boundary clarification, another 6 for dissolution proceedings. Civil damages recovery could take additional year, but criminal charges would move faster. Conspiracy and fraud carry federal penalties when involving quasi-governmental entities. We prepared comprehensive presentation for county commissioners. All evidence compiled for public accountability. Media invited to attend dissolution petition filing. Cordelia remained unaware that her own maintenance worker had provided smoking gun evidence of retaliation conspiracy. The technical foundation was solid. Community support was growing. Legal strategy was bulletproof. Everything my father taught me about building structures applied to building legal cases. Start with solid foundation. Use quality materials. Follow proper procedures. Check everything twice. Cordelia's fraudulent empire was built on sand. Our legal demolition would be engineered precision. The feeling of community solidarity during difficult preparation meetings reminded me why I'd moved to mountains originally. For genuine neighbors, not HOA subjects. Time to show Pine Ridge what authentic community governance looked like, without fraudulent authority, harassment campaigns, or selective enforcement. Just neighbors helping neighbors solve problems together. The way communities were supposed to work. Cordelia's desperation manifested on Thanksgiving morning, 6 a.m. sharp. Process server at my door with nuisance lawsuit papers while I was preparing to visit Dad's grave. $50,000 in damages for defaming HOA reputation. Claims my conspiracy theories damaged property values throughout Pine Ridge. Demanded injunction against neighborhood meetings and coalition activities. The timing wasn't coincidental. Rex had been photographing my daily routines for weeks. They knew exactly when to strike for maximum emotional impact. But grief makes some people stronger, not weaker. Local newspaper picked up Cordelia's version first. Disgruntled resident refuses property maintenance standards. Photos of my native plant garden labeled as evidence of community blight. She'd failed to mention pending legal challenges to HOA authority. Selective truth-telling for media manipulation. Rex's surveillance escalated beyond creepy into criminal territory. Trail cameras appeared overnight, aimed at coalition members' driveways. License plate documentation of meeting attendees. Following neighbors to grocery stores for photographing private conversations. Ivy Riley obtained restraining order after Rex photographed her children at school pickup. Judge called his behavior systematic stalking with intimidating intent. The acrid smell of spray paint hit me when I discovered my mailbox vandalized for the second time that week. Property sabotage incidents multiplied. Solar panels discovered with small rocks thrown at surfaces. Garden irrigation lines mysteriously cut during night hours. Workshop door lock filled with superglue twice. Anonymous letters sent to coalition members threatening immediate foreclosure. Fake legal notices claiming lien filings within 24 hours. Phone calls to members' employers suggesting legal troubles affecting job performance. Rex distributed flyers throughout Pine Ridge claiming coalition members were property value destroyers and community troublemakers. Meanwhile, Cordelia attempted selling rental properties before legal proceedings concluded. Real estate listings suddenly appeared for properties within disputed boundaries. Buyers fled after learning about pending HOA dissolution lawsuits. Title insurance companies refused coverage for properties with boundary disputes. Her empire was crumbling faster than she could liquidate assets. Helena filed emergency restraining order against Rex's surveillance activities. Police reports documented property vandalism incidents. Counter-lawsuit prepared for defamation and systematic harassment. Local media contacted with evidence of HOA boundary fraud. Real story was much more interesting than Cordelia's version. The crunching sound of gravel under surveillance equipment reminded me daily that we were winning. Desperate people make desperate mistakes. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Maintenance worker approached me outside hardware store with manila envelope. "Thought you should see this," he said quietly. Written documentation of Cordelia instructing utility disconnections to coalition members' homes, electric, water, and gas service termination without legal authority or due process. Worker refused to follow illegal instructions. Provided time-stamped emails proving conspiracy to retaliate against legal challengers. Evidence of criminal conspiracy to deprive civil rights under federal law. Community support expanded beyond Pine Ridge boundaries. 3 non-coalition neighbors expressed private support. Local hardware store owner offered discounts for vandalism repairs. County Commissioner's Office agreed to investigate HOA boundary claims after media inquiry. Veterans Organization donated legal research assistance through their advocacy network. The cold mountain air during early morning vandalism discoveries mixed with growing excitement about approaching victory. Cordelia's financial desperation showed in increasingly erratic behavior. Emergency board meetings called with 2 hours' notice. Attempts to pass retroactive fee increases for legal defense funds. Her new lawyer withdrew from the case, citing client ethical concerns after reviewing our evidence. Third attorney in 2 months. Rex disappeared for 3 days after intensive police questioning about stalking complaints. Found hiding at his sister's house in Wyoming, avoiding Colorado jurisdiction. Bad mistake. Interstate flight to avoid prosecution creates federal charges. The intimidation campaign backfired spectacularly. Instead of silencing coalition members, harassment created additional evidence for criminal prosecution. Denver Post picked up HOA tries to bulldoze home during funeral story. Social media explosion brought national property rights organizations offering legal support. Local TV stations requested interviews with coalition members. Story going viral beyond Colorado boundaries. Helena scheduled boundary hearing with county commissioners. All evidence compiled for public presentation. Media invited to maximum transparency and accountability. Cordelia remained unaware that maintenance worker had provided smoking gun evidence of utility disconnection conspiracy. The warmth of genuine community support during crisis meetings felt better than any climate-controlled HOA boardroom. 200 residents confirmed attendance for emergency town hall meeting. County commissioners providing public forum for boundary fraud presentation. Sheriff's Department offering security for coalition members after documented threats and harassment. Local businesses contributing to legal funds supporting HOA dissolution efforts. The engineering principle held true. When structures fail systematically, you don't repair individual components. You rebuild entire foundation. Cordelia's fraudulent authority was about to face complete demolition. And unlike her illegal expansion, our legal destruction would be thoroughly documented, properly authorized, and absolutely final. Cordelia's nuclear option came while I was burying my father. Emergency powers clause invoked to demolish my home for structural modifications threatening neighboring properties. She'd hired demolition contractor without proper permits or inspections. Scheduled destruction for the exact day of Dad's funeral service. Rex's surveillance had provided the timing. 7 a.m. sharp. Bulldozers arrived while I stood graveside 40 miles away. Sage called frantically from Denver after Dalton's tip-off about heavy machinery rolling down our mountain road. "Dad, there are bulldozers at your house!" she screamed through the phone. I left my father's burial service and drove like hell through mountain curves. Dalton Rivers and 3 veterans had blocked bulldozers with pickup trucks. American flags flying from tailgates. Former Marines protecting a neighbor's property from illegal demolition. Police arrived to find demolition crew with no valid permits, no structural engineering reports, no legal authority whatsoever. The diesel exhaust and dust clouds from idling bulldozers mixed with my rage as I confronted the contractor. "Who authorized this demolition?" I demanded. Contractor handed over payment receipts from Cordelia's personal business account, $23,000 for emergency structural removal. Recorded phone conversations on his device proved coordination with HOA president. Criminal conspiracy documented in real time. Cordelia's cover-up attempt was pathetic. Claimed demolition was mistake by overzealous contractor. But bank records don't lie. Personal checks don't write themselves. Rex disappeared for 3 days after police questioning. Found hiding at his sister's house in Wyoming. Warrant issued for arrest on conspiracy and property destruction charges. The sound of cell phone cameras clicking during bulldozer confrontation meant this story was going viral within hours. Media attention exploded beyond regional coverage. Denver Post headline, HOA attempts home demolition during owner's father's funeral. Stories shared thousands of times across social platforms. National property rights organizations offered legal support. Constitutional lawyers interested in civil rights violations under federal law. Local TV stations requested exclusive interviews. Documentary filmmaker contacted about feature-length investigation. Cordelia attempted fleeing jurisdiction before criminal charges filed. Tesla found abandoned at Denver International Airport. Credit card transactions showed flight to Phoenix. Bad move. Interstate flight creates federal fugitive charges. Police search of Cordelia's abandoned home revealed financial records documenting systematic embezzlement. Evidence of forged signatures on boundary expansion documents. Communications planning specific retaliation against named residents. Rex's cooperation came quickly, facing felony charges. Detailed timeline of harassment campaigns provided to prosecutors, admission of property vandalism and illegal surveillance activities. He revealed Cordelia's plan to bankrupt coalition members through endless legal fees and property damage. The feeling of mountain wind carrying news crews' voices reminded me that justice was finally getting public attention. Community rally filled Pine Ridge Community Center with 200 supporters. County commissioners publicly condemned HOA leadership actions. Sheriff's Department provided security for coalition members. Local businesses offered support for legal fund. Hardware store, coffee shop, and mountain gear outfitter contributed services for coalition activities. Helena filed amended lawsuit including criminal conspiracy evidence. Class action expanded to include all 47 Pine Ridge residents. Damages claim increased to $2.3 million plus punitive damages. Bank records provided irrefutable evidence of financial fraud. Demolition without permits constituted criminal property destruction. Conspiracy charges applied when multiple people planned illegal acts. Public media attention accelerated legal proceedings. County commissioners scheduled emergency hearing on HOA dissolution. Criminal trial date set for conspiracy and fraud charges. Community center reserved for maximum attendance capacity. National property rights lawyers arriving to observe precedent-setting case. The document discovery phase revealed 30 years of systematic fraud. Meeting minutes with forged signatures. Financial transfers to personal accounts. Selective enforcement targeting specific ethnic and economic demographics. Pattern of harassment extending beyond property violations into civil rights territory. Cordelia's final miscalculation was attempting to destroy evidence. Digital forensics recovered deleted emails coordinating retaliation campaigns. Financial records showing embezzlement patterns dating back to her predecessor. The warmth of community embrace during crisis support reminded me why mountains attract people seeking authentic relationships. Rex's signed confession detailed systematic harassment operations. Admission of photographing children, following residents, and coordinating false complaints with building inspectors. Federal civil rights violations when quasi-governmental entities target specific groups. Constitutional protections apply to HOA actions under state authority. Helena explained our legal position was bulletproof. Criminal conspiracy, financial fraud, civil rights violations, and federal charges for interstate flight. Cordelia's fraudulent empire was collapsing under documented evidence weight. County sheriff secured HOA financial accounts pending criminal proceedings. Forensic accountants tracing embezzled funds through multiple business entities. Real estate licenses permanently revoked by state board. Professional sanctions for boundary fraud participation. The stage was set for public dissolution hearing. Complete transparency, media coverage, and community accountability. Everything my father taught me about building lasting structures applied to dismantling corrupt ones. Follow proper procedures. Document everything. Use quality evidence. Cordelia's house of cards was about to fall publicly. County commissioners' meeting room packed with 150 residents, media representatives from 5 news outlets, court reporter documenting everything for legal record, sheriff's deputies maintaining order due to high emotions. The atmosphere crackled with anticipation. 30 years of fraudulent HOA governance about to face public reckoning. Helena opened with professional surveyor presenting boundary evidence on large display maps. Original 1987 subdivision clearly marked. Current enforcement boundaries extending illegally beyond platted area. 24 properties were never legally subject to HOA authority, she announced. Every fee collected, every fine imposed, every threat made was fraudulent. Financial forensic accountant detailed $340,000 in illegal collection. Charts showing money flow from resident accounts to Cordelia's personal business entities. Coalition members testified about years of harassment and intimidation. Elderly Jenkins described $3,200 in fines for mailbox color. Ivy Riley explained children afraid to play outside due to surveillance. Dalton Rivers detailed coordinated campaign to silence HOA critics through systematic harassment. The sound of gavels striking wood echoed through packed meeting room as commissioners called for order. Then came the bombshell documents, Secretary of State confirming no legal filing for 1994 boundary expansion. Forged homeowner consent signatures exposed through handwriting analysis. Rex's signed confession admitting systematic harassment campaign read aloud for court record. Detailed timeline of property vandalism, illegal surveillance, and intimidation tactics. Cordelia made desperate final appearance with new attorney, returned from Denver facing federal fugitive charges, claimed boundary expansion was good faith mistake by predecessor. Your Honor, Helena responded, good faith doesn't explain 30 years of fee collection without legal authority. Cordelia's new attorney reviewed evidence during lunch recess. Withdrew from case immediately after examining forged documents and financial records. Left Cordelia representing herself against federal conspiracy charges. Denver Post reporter asked direct questions about embezzlement. Cordelia's refusal to answer recorded by TV cameras for evening news broadcasts. 23 residents testified about illegal fees, harassment campaigns, and systematic intimidation. Personal stories of families living in fear under fraudulent authority. The feeling of relief washing over packed meeting room was almost tangible as truth finally emerged publicly. Rex's confession letter provided smoking gun evidence, detailed coordination with Cordelia for property vandalism, utility disconnection threats, and false building code complaints, conspiracy to deprive civil rights under federal law, interstate flight to avoid prosecution, criminal organization operating under quasi-governmental cover. Commissioners voted unanimously for immediate HOA dissolution. All covenants and restrictions declared null and void. Residents entitled to full refund of illegally collected fees. County sheriff directed to secure HOA financial accounts for victim restitution. Spontaneous applause lasted 3 minutes. Neighbors embracing and sharing contact information for first time in years. Local newspaper photographer captured emotional moments. TV reporters interviewed coalition members about systematic fraud exposure. National property rights groups citing case as precedent for other fraudulent HOAs. Cordelia arrested in parking lot on fraud and conspiracy charges. Rex sentenced to 6 months jail plus restitution payments. Both defendants ordered $50,000 each in punitive damages. Real estate licenses permanently revoked by state board. The smell of fresh mountain air as residents exited building felt like freedom after years of oppression. Forensic audit revealed additional $180,000 in Cordelia's personal accounts. Punitive damages brought total recovery to $1.2 million. Legal costs covered by contingency fee arrangement. Every family receiving full refund plus damages for fraudulent governance. Media moment created lasting impact. County commissioners establishing task force for investigating other potentially fraudulent HOA districts statewide. Legislative committee considering HOA reform legislation citing Pine Ridge case as evidence of systematic abuse potential. Victory celebration continued in parking lot. Community organizing phone numbers exchanged. Plans for voluntary neighborhood association focused on genuine cooperation instead of enforcement. Property values increased 12% after dissolution announcement. 3 families purchased homes specifically because no HOA appeared in listings. National documentary filmmakers scheduled interviews about fraudulent quasi-governmental entities operating under HOA cover. The legal ruling created permanent precedent. Fraudulent boundary expansions can be challenged and dissolved. Residents have constitutional protections against illegal quasi-governmental authority. The warmth of handshakes and congratulations in parking lot reminded me of genuine community celebration. Helena's final statement summarized our victory. This case proves that fraudulent authority cannot withstand systematic legal challenge supported by community organization. County commissioners praised coalition members for exposing 30-year fraud through proper legal channels. Sheriff's Department commended documentation and evidence quality. Criminal justice system would handle conspiracy and federal charges. Civil recovery would restore financial damages. Constitutional protections would prevent future abuse. But the real victory was community healing after decades of fear-based governance. Pine Ridge residents finally free to be neighbors instead of subjects, the way mountain communities were supposed to work. 6 months later, Pine Ridge transformed into the mountain community I'd dreamed of. Property values jumped 15% after dissolution news spread nationwide. 3 families drove from Texas specifically to buy homes with no HOA in the listings. My native plant garden became a pilgrimage site for freedom-loving homeowners. Colorado State University featured it in sustainable landscaping programs. Visitors climbed mountain roads just to see what authentic ecological living looked like. Monthly potluck dinners rotated between homes. Started in my workshop, expanded to Millicent's sunroom, then Dalton's heated garage during blizzards. Real neighbors sharing stories instead of violation notices. The smell of Ivy's homemade tamales mixing with mountain pine reminded me that community builds itself when fear disappears. Community tool library replaced the old HOA office. Shared everything from chainsaws to bread makers. Resource cooperation instead of rule enforcement. Dalton's veteran crew maintained elderly neighbors' properties voluntarily. Snow removal, gutter cleaning, minor repairs. Military precision applied to genuine care. Financial recovery exceeded our wildest expectations. Every family got full refunds plus damages. Punitive awards funded projects we actually wanted. New playground, hiking trail maintenance, emergency communication system. Cordelia's auction was therapeutic. Watching her luxury furniture sold to pay victims felt like cosmic justice. Her real estate empire built on fraud completely dismantled. Rex shocked everyone with his transformation. 6 months community service maintaining hiking trails. AA meetings and anger management changed him completely. He personally apologized to every family he'd terrorized. The sound of children's laughter echoing through formerly forbidden spaces filled my heart every morning. My workshop evolved into community makerspace, teaching woodworking to local teenagers. My father's construction wisdom passing to the next generation seeking authentic mountain living. Sage moved back from Denver permanently. Corporate stress replaced by mountain healing and genuine neighbors who actually cared about each other. The ripple effects went national. My story featured in Property Rights Quarterly magazine. Helena's firm fielded 200 boundary dispute inquiries. Colorado legislature passed HOA reform laws citing our case. Documentary filmmaker premiered Fraudulent Kingdoms: The HOA Crisis at Denver Film Festival. Standing ovation from audience fed up with suburban tyranny. But the real legacy was our scholarship fund. Pine Ridge Conservation Scholarship provides $10,000 annually for environmental studies. Native Plant Garden serves as outdoor classroom for school trips. Monthly sustainable building workshops teach my father's wisdom to aspiring homeowners. No permits required, no HOA approval needed. Just neighbors helping neighbors build better lives. The feeling of genuine handshakes from people no longer afraid created daily magic in mountain air. Cordelia got 18 months federal prison for mail fraud, $340,000 restitution plus legal fees. Real estate licenses revoked in 4 states. Permanent ban from HOA leadership anywhere. Her downfall birthed something beautiful. Pine Ridge became the model for voluntary community cooperation. Social events, emergency preparedness, trail maintenance, everything an HOA pretends to do, but actually done by neighbors who care. Property crime dropped 40% because we know each other now. Local tourism increased thanks to our conservation garden and building workshops. The constitutional precedent strengthened homeowner protections nationwide. Other fraudulent HOAs faced legal challenges inspired by our victory. Here's what I learned. Bullies depend on isolated victims too scared to fight back. But legal research plus community organizing defeats any corrupt authority. Sometimes you have to completely destroy broken systems before building something authentic. The sight of native wildflowers blooming freely across unrestricted yards proved that freedom grows naturally when artificial barriers disappear. Practical takeaways for you. Research HOA, boundaries before buying. Demand, Secretary of State registration proof. Document everything with photos and certified mail. Connect with neighbors facing similar harassment. Original covenants trump later board interpretations. Class action lawsuits reduce individual costs. Truth always wins against fraud. Drop your HOA nightmare in the comments. You're not alone fighting suburban tyranny. Subscribe to HOA Stories for more David versus Goliath victories exactly like this one. Smash that notification bell because next week's story involves a corrupt mayor, fake property appraisals, and a very public perp walk that made national news. That scheme cost taxpayers $2 million before I exposed it using nothing but public records and engineering math. But first, I'm reading every single HOA horror story you share below. Because every family deserves freedom from fraudulent authority. Every neighbor deserves respect instead of harassment. Mountain living taught me that authentic community grows naturally when you remove invasive control freaks. Just like native plants thriving after weeds get pulled. Welcome to HOA Stories, where corrupt authority comes to die.
That's all for today's HOA madness. If watching justice serve itself made your day, smash that like button, share your thoughts down below, and make sure you're subscribed. More outrageous neighborhood showdowns are just around the corner.